The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents the Q and A portion from my recent talk at Ohio State University on categorizing arguments.
Today, Pew Research came out.
Yes.
This war, this is what I describe better as the temperature of people's views of different religious groups, and atheism climbed from 41% favorable to 50% favorable in the war, I guess. So thank you again for all of that.
I'll take credit for all of that, Rias, by the way. It was an interesting thing. By the way, if you haven't seen it, you can go look it up. I only saw part of the study, and I saw it from Hemet, because I get half of what I know from Hemet anyway. But it basically had temperature scales divided up into age groups. And for like younger, 18 to 25 or whatever, it basically was rate all these religions based on whether you view them favorably or not. And atheism was over 50% on that one. Now, it progressed until we got to the over 65 or over 75 crowd, and atheist is way down at the bottom with Muslim. We might have been higher than Muslims among Fox News viewers.
And collectively, I think it's climbed from 41 to 50%. So again, making you all less articulate as we open up to other people. My question to you is, I'm an out-of-the-closet atheist for about 3 years, and I struggle with sometimes, though, it's been a casual conversation. Somebody asks me, what religion are you, what church do you go to, or something like that. I want to say something profound, but not off-putting. And if I say I'm an atheist, it kind of shuts it down. I've tried, I don't believe in gods. I don't believe in ghost gods or goblins. I've tried these different variations to try to stimulate some thought without becoming, what would you suggest if somebody innocently says, what religion are you? How would you respond to kind of plant that seed but not come across as being over the top?
So the question for those who didn't hear it is, please tell me something I can say that will sound profound when people ask me. So I like just being honest. On occasion, I'm an asshole. It's just unavoidable. If I get a little like saccharine, over the top attitude detected from the person asking this, I'll say I got better things to do with my life than go to church. Now, that's not what I say all the time. I'm happy to tell people when they ask, I'm an atheist, I don't go to church. More often, I will say, I was a Southern Baptist for 25 years, but now I'm an atheist, and so I just don't go to church. And I think that, and not everybody can say that, obviously, if you were a Catholic or been atheist your whole life. But I think saying that, I like watching people think and making people think. And what this does is it starts with taking the edge off, and then smacks them from the other side. So I bought a truck. I have reason for it. Not only do I haul around props for magic shows, but I've got a woodworking shop and some other stuff. So I needed a truck. I've been wanting one for years. I bought one. Posted on Facebook. Right off the bat, a lot of my uber green, liberal, godless friends were like, nobody needs a truck that big. Screw you. You don't know what my life's like. What's the carbon footprint on that? Well, it's actually smaller than my Sonata, which gets 35 miles to the gallon, because I drive it less. You can't just use one component to figure out how evil I am to Mother Earth. But it was so frustrating that I was pissed, and I was like, I'm going to go down to Cabela's and buy a gun and pose with it in front of the truck just to piss them off some more. I did. I bought a competition pellet air rifle BB gun thing, but I didn't post the picture. The reason I say this is, I don't know. I don't know why I said that story. It had something to do with your question about this. You don't owe anybody an explanation, and you kind of got to go with your gut to say, is the person I'm talking to, do I want to give them the sort of the answer that will further a conversation or not? Now, I've said many times, ridiculous ideas are deserving of ridicule by definition, but people aren't. So I try to ridicule ideas, but not people. Unfortunately, you can't do that without people taking offense anyway. If it seems that they're already offended by the mere fact that I exist, screw it. I'm going to say whatever happens to shock them. I don't care if they walk away with, oh, it's another angry atheist, because they're already wrong. If it's somewhere in the middle, I might do the, hey, I used to believe, but now I don't. Church isn't for me. Or if I'm really if I haven't had an argument in 2 or 3 hours, I might do the, what church do you think I should go to your church? What is it about church? Why do you think I should go? Why was that even a question? The things that get them to put them on defense to actually defend, why would they ask this question? There was something I had and I lost it. I don't know. I'll wait for somebody else. Yes, you had a question.
Yes, and this one actually sort of relates to his.
Good, maybe I'll think of that thing.
But I was kind of curious. A while ago, I remember hearing you making a distinction between belief and having reasonable expectations within a given scenario.
No, I made a distinction between faith
Oh, okay.
and reasonable expectations.
Yes. Okay. I understand. But you did make a distinction between faith and reasonable expectations.
Yes.
So that being the case, by the way, you made a brilliant point about language. I'm an English major, and I was curious that with regards to distinguishing between faith and reasonable expectations, do you find it helpful on a cultural level if we manage to demystify an association of faith with reasonable expectations? And do you feel like it will help people become less likely to attach themselves to a particular ideology with regards to when someone criticizes that ideology? If we begin to sort of kind of take those 2 points apart and make sure they're not confused or put together?
I'm pretty sure my answer is yes. And the way I tend to do that is, I know that words have a number of different usages. The word faith has many. There are some usages of the word faith that would certainly apply. You could say, oh, you have faith that this chair will support your weight. Well, all right, let's not go overboard here. What they mean by faith in that context is not the same as what they mean by faith when they talk about their religion. It's an equivocation. It is an attempt to legitimize this version of faith by showing that this version's okay. And so I refuse to use the word faith with regard to anything that I do. And when somebody says, you have faith that that chair will hold you, I say, no, the way you would use faith to describe your religion, I don't have faith. What I have is a reasonable expectation based on all of the available evidence, and I can test it and demonstrate it to somebody else. To put that in the same category of, I prayed and my cataracts were gone, therefore God wants you to vote against abortion. Those things are not remotely in the same category. And so, yes, exposing those over and over. The language thing you were talking about, I'm betting that it was the Latin Spaniduck thing where Latin evolved into Spanish, et cetera. And so there was never a time where there was a Latin-speaking mother who gave birth to a Spanish-speaking child, even though we know it's about evolution, essentially, exposing that. Surly Amy liked it so much that she took the crocoduck thing and made me a necklace that has the Latin Spaniduck on it, which I liked. Yes?
I got the impression, although I could be wrong, that most of the arguments that you were, and tactics you were discussing earlier were what Christians do.
No.
Okay, please correct me.
Okay. Yes, they are what Christians do, but they're not exclusive to Christianity. Yes, I mean, that's why I threw in a little bit of Mormonism, but I'm glad you brought this up because this may be more important than half of what I said. The Kalam cosmological argument, which William Lane Craig is famous for using, it begins with everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. Now I have problems with the argument, but the truth is, It's not an argument for the existence of God. God doesn't appear in any premise or the conclusion. And this argument isn't exclusive to Christianity. It was popularized, the Kalam version, I believe, was popularized by Muslims. And so if they present that argument, now when Craig does this, he'll present the Kalam, and then he'll say, go watch one of his videos. I'm not going to get this exactly right. Therefore, the universe had a cause for its existence, and because of a number of other factors, we know that cause must be God. He has, on occasion, presented those several other arguments to talk about the properties of what that cause must be in order to get to Jesus, but he doesn't most of the time. Most of the time it's, here's the Kalam cosmological argument, therefore Jesus. And I'm just sitting there going, Jesus, Bill? How is anybody eating this up? So some arguments are going to be exclusive. The categories, when somebody presents arguments from their holy book or scriptures or whatever, that could apply to anything. And Muslims use it specifically because where we don't have originals for the Bible, I'm pretty sure they don't actually have originals for the Quran either. But they have a history that traces back to much, much closer to the original, and they have far less textual variance among the scriptures that are there. It's also much younger. And this is their argument. And by the way, there are other popular arguments coming out of Islam basically saying that the Quran teaches you about science. Like it talks about fetuses and describes them or these other things. Here, just for your information, they can do the same thing with the Bible. Plenty of passages in the Bible that might lead one to believe that it's flat. I don't care that much about colloquialisms about four corners. My favorite one is that there's a tree from which you can see the entire earth. Well, that's impossible on an oblate spheroid, and it would have to be flat. Anybody who talks about our holy book told us something about scientists long before any scientists discovered it. First of all, you're only able to interpret it that way because science found it. And second of all, the time at which it was reasonable to believe that this is the way it is when science found it. Your book didn't do anything to give us a better understanding about the gene model or the germ model of disease. Oh, but the Bible said wash your hands. Oh, bite me. That could have been a ceremonial thing that had absolutely no reason at all. Or it could have been that they noticed something. But until science actually comes along and discovers and understands and creates models that allow us to predict and control reality, what your holy book says is irrelevant. And by the way, if you're going to cherry pick the times where you can struggle to interpret that your holy book told us something that was ultimately was discovered to be true, I don't think you get to complain when atheists go out and pick things that, hey, look, this one's not right. Bats aren't birds. Oh, well, bats aren't birds. That's not a big deal. I agree, it's not a big deal. Some ancient Israelite writing down, categorizing bats as birds, I really don't care because I didn't think he was writing a science book. But as soon as Christians start coming to me to say that he was writing a science book, I get to point out that it's wrong. You had your hand up.
Yeah, so I learned a story as a kid from the Book of Mormon. So you brought that up a couple times. And really briefly, the story is God's chosen people. It's a parable. They're going through a building. And to get to the building, they have to hold to this iron rod, right? It's like with faith. And the people above them in the building are yelling at them, they're jeering at them, saying that they're wrong, right? They're making fun of them. So the only way they get to the building is they ignore them and they hold to the iron rod, right? So they would use this story as like the main line of defense against people that say that you're wrong about your faith.
Yep.
And they would, they still use it as.
Sure.
And my point is, from the outside, now it looks ridiculous. But for 17 years or so, since it's already, presupposed, I guess, people are going to say that you're wrong.
Yeah.
It actually works a lot of the time.
The same thing is true with verses from the Christian New Testament about people will persecute you in my name's sake. One of the things that this does, and I went through and I did a verse-by-verse deconstruction of the Sermon on the Mount and how it creates a victim mentality. That if you're living right by God, the world who hates God and reviles God will treat you poorly. Now, what some people have decided is that if they're running around preaching their religion and the world treats them poorly, that makes them think they're necessarily doing the right thing. Could just be you're an asshole. There's a little fallacy in that reasoning there. Just because somebody's persecuting you doesn't mean that it's because we despise your religion. Maybe we're just tired of you. I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I'm sure that it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know offhand. It wouldn't surprise me if there were similar passages in the Quran as well. Because if there's one thing that the religions, there have been many religions that have died off. The one thing that the current group of religions, excluding Scientology, have in common is that over the years, the religions that make claims that are too specific die off as soon as we show that that's, nobody thinks that Thor or Zeus are throwing lightning bolts anymore. I said that on the show once. Nobody believes in the Greek pantheon anymore. I got email from people who claim they do. But by and large, those religions have died out. In order to make a religion successful, it needs to be just vague enough that it becomes essentially unfalsifiable. It needs to provide people with the feeling that they have answers, because God and the supernatural have no explanatory power. When we explain things, we explain the unknown in terms of the known, not gnomes. The unknown in terms of the known. What theists are doing are explaining the unknown in terms of the unknown. They're trying to solve a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery. So religion's defense mechanisms are to be just vague enough, but just compelling enough to offer people the feeling that they have answers and assurance and comfort and hope, to eliminate or alleviate and ease some natural fears that humans have about being alone. Nobody loves me, there's nobody around, I'm all alone, about what happens when you die. And most of them will create new fears that they can then cure. It was said that religion poisons you and then gives you the cure. And I said that I think what religions do is convince you you're sick when you're not, and then they offer you the homeopathic remedy. Yes?
I know I'm late. I just want to say really thank you because you really helped me in my adolescence via YouTube, and thank you. And I was at something else, that's why I was late. But
Thank you.
my question is, I haven't really been keeping up with you lately, but
Well, then, anybody else have a question?
what is your stance on philosophy of science and philosophy in general as kind of a filling the void piece for religion? Because you just discussed falsifiability, and that's science, and then something to adhere to, feel good, something that's interesting, but not necessarily.
Oh, okay. So it was difficult for me to follow because I had no framework at which I would have considered philosophy of science filling a void for religion. But basically your question, if I understand it, is the thing that I was pointing out about religions, about giving people assurance and the confidence that they have answers. What do I think of philosophy of science to replace that?
And philosophy in general. Do you think it could be a good thing?
Oh, absolutely. Provided that the goal is truth, as best we can. I'm not going to derail this into a discussion of what is truth and can we know. Truth is that which comports with reality. And then you get into, well, are we in the same reality as solipsism? I don't care. That stuff doesn't matter right now. If the goal is to find the best way to have the most accurate understanding of the reality that you experience, I can only see that as a good thing. I love it so much I put on a t-shirt, I want to believe as many true things as few false things as possible. And so when people come up with their pet superstitious or supernatural propositions that are unfalsifiable, I will almost just terminate the conversation right then. And I pointed out in some of the Q and A before this started that one good thing to ask the person you're talking to is, if I show that your arguments are flawed, will you change your mind about the belief we're discussing? Because if the answer is no, then why are you talking about the argument? It may not be that all conversation is out the window, but if you say, I believe this, oh cool, present an argument for it, all right? If I were to show you that argument's wrong, would you stop believing that? Nope. Then the argument is now irrelevant. I want to get to the thing that would actually change your mind. And if the answer is that nothing would change your mind, then the only conversation I'm willing to have is one about how we should go about reasonably changing our minds. And if that conversation is beyond the individual, then I will just move on to somebody else. But yeah. Did you have a question? Or were you stretching your knitting hand? Or crochet hand? Oh, it's crochet. My wife knits, I crochet, and crochet's better. It is. I don't know why you're laughing. Knitting has 2 stitches. Knit, purl. Yeah, you can throw some,
Cable stitch.
well, yeah, but that's still the same stitches. You just take it off and you put it on a little circular. You've got chain, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet. Then you can, when you can go into the front loops, the back loops, the post. You can all kinds of stuff. I'm a pro. I am. My mom and my grandmother come to me and say, we taught you how to crochet, but we don't understand this pattern. Can you help us? Yes. Yes, I can. Did you have a question?
I actually have I'm piggybacking off of him. Mine's more of a comment. I was a Christian myself for about 25 years, and my, I guess, journey away from Christianity was, I have a 8-year-old son now, but 3 years ago, he was 5, and just pretty good, right?
I love that. Keep going. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So just the thought of like answering the question when he asked one day, is God real? And I did, what any normal person would do, like research. And as I researched more to answer this question for my son, I started realizing that I was believing things for the wrong reasons. And I basically found your guys' show in this journey. And I just want to say, the guys in the control booth, you tell them thank you for showing up on Sundays, getting it all set up. I know you guys would probably like to be doing other things on Sunday, but thank you for
I would not like to do anything else on Sunday. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Tell Tracy, Russell, Martin, anybody that the new guy, what's the new guy's name?
Phil.
Phil, tell Phil thank you for showing up, that it's been helping me for the last 3 years, and I appreciate it.
I'd call Phil and let you tell him yourself, but he's probably building a ramp. That guy does more volunteer work than anybody I ever met. He's awesome. Yeah, people ask me, hey, what should I tell my kids? They're your kids. I don't even have any kids. I'm not opposed to kids. I would like to have kids. And my answer has always been the same, and that's teach your kids how to think, not what to think. Don't panic too much. I didn't get a lot of instruction in how to think, found my way out, so did a lot of other people. I would imagine a great many people in this room were adherents to some religion or other for many, many years, found their way out. I suspect that there's some people in here who still haven't found their way out, and that's fine too. I'd rather talk to theists than atheists. Not that I don't like you guys, but I can do a video. But I love doing the TV show. When I first started doing it, I was also president and librarian and all this other stuff. And Jeff D came up and he's like, don't take on too much, man. I don't want you to burn out. It's been 12 years on the show. And
you look great without hair, by the way.
Yes. Somebody and also, so my weight thing's been an issue too, because I found out I was diabetic and I lost 35 pounds, and then I put it all back on, and now I'm in the process of taking it back off. But somebody did like a best of clip on YouTube, and it goes, fat Matt with hair, fat Matt with hair, fat Matt with less hair, fat Matt with less hair, fat Matt bald, little bit thinner Matt bald, little bit thinner Matt bald. Matt at about 215, which is as low as I got, and I still needed to go lower, but it's a noticeable difference from 270. And then it started going a little bit fatter Matt, a little bit fatter Matt. And I was like, first of all, I don't want to watch a best of clip of me anyway. I despite the fact that I talk a lot, I'm not that enamored with my own voice that I have to go watch myself. But somebody was like, you should watch this clip. And it was like, Just a face alone. And I loved it because people would call the show and they'd be like, "You're fat." And? I wasn't. Which category of argument for the existence of God do I put this one in? You're fat. I'm going to come down and punch you in your fat face for Jesus. I think that's an argument for belief and not an argument for the existence of God. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, just going off what the last question said about your son. I feel like at least with deconversion stories I've heard, that's like a common theme that someone has like this emotional realization that they need to know what their whether their beliefs are true and they didn't care about it before.
Yeah.
So do you have I don't know like a pitch that you can give to someone about why that needs to be important because there's so much comfort.
Oh no, that's why I did the T-shirt. I want to believe as many true things, and few false things as possible. Caring about the truth. I'm an atheist because I set out to be the best Christian I could be. I set out to fulfill my obligation under 1 Peter 3:15 to be ready at all times to provide a reason for the faith that's within me. He's an atheist because he actually dug into what he believed in order to help out his son. You want to know where else people become atheists? Seminary. Seminaries with textual criticism classes. Seminaries that actually teach you. Jeff D's parents are both preachers, and when he found his way out, he went to them and said, "Hey, I'm an atheist, and it's because of this, this, and this." And his parents actually looked at him and said, "Yeah, we know all that, but the people in the pews aren't ready for that." What? Y'all are too stupid to know the truth, and that's the difference, is that I think you're not. I have a friend who I love dearly and always will. We were best friends in high school. He was at my wedding. We went to the same church. We did all kinds of things we shouldn't have. We were thick as thieves. And I left and went in the Navy, and he went to college and became a youth pastor. Now, myself and many of the other kids in our youth group genuinely felt that God was calling us to ministry. As a matter of fact, the reason that I went in the Navy is I thought God wanted me to be a preacher. I was terrified of public speaking, which is incredibly ironic now. And I had a girlfriend, and I wanted to get married, and I had no other options, and I had been lazy enough in school. I was bored out of my mind, so there's no college options for me, which is why if OSU wants to give me an honorary degree, I'll take it. But I don't care about degrees. I don't care about credentials. But I went in the Navy. Then I went and had my software career, and then I lost my job and everything all at once. And I thought God was punishing me for caring about my career and for going to strip clubs and things like that. And I thought he was saying, you still believe in me, but you're not walking the walk anymore. And so I set out. My roommate at the time was an atheist. I set out to convince him. Because I took my religion seriously, I'm an atheist. Turns out the best Christian I could be is an atheist. My friend became a youth minister, married one of the girls in his youth group. Then they got divorced, and he married a woman who was Catholic. And so he switched from Baptist to Catholic. Then he got divorced from her and married another woman who was Catholic and remained a Catholic. And I had a conversation with him, and I know he won't take offense at this because we're close. And I asked him, we went to the same church, we grew up, we studied the same things. You knew as well as I did that Catholics are Mary-worshiping heathens who are not following the Bible. How can you possibly be a Catholic now? And I asked him this because he said, how can you possibly be an atheist? So I asked him, how can you possibly be a Catholic now? And he looks at me with a straight face and he goes, I like to drink, and they let me drink. And I was like, okay, so one of us took this shit seriously and ended up an atheist, and the other one wanted to drink and ended up a Catholic. I think that when it comes to who's more credible on religion, the guy who went to college and was a youth pastor has far less credibility than I do. Yes, ma'am.
Did you tell him that atheism lets him drink too?
Yeah. I didn't. I suspect that the other factor in there was his wife and his kids. Yeah, atheism will let you drink too. Some people say that's all we do. Skeptics at the pub, atheists at the pub. Did you have a question? Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I want to start by saying I have 2 kids, one of whom just became a teenager. So if you're ever looking to start that 100-child experiment,
It's too late. It's too late. They've already been exposed. Yes, let me pause you for just 1 second. By the way, if anybody has to leave, I don't ever stop talking, and you're not going to offend me or ruin anything else. So thank you for coming, and anybody else, but go ahead.
the question I have for you is what you can do when you're. I have a coworker. He and I like to share friendly arguments on religion. He's a very devout evangelical Christian, and I'm not. So, what can you do when you find yourselves not sharing the same set of facts?
Well, let me fix the current political climate while I'm here too.
An example I can give you is we were discussing the Bible. He was trying to use the Bible as, this is why you should believe, because it says this in this book. And I had just read a wonderful book by Bart Ehrman, and so I was, talking to him about, well, again, these aren't eyewitnesses. Most scholars think they were written anywhere from 70 to a couple hundred years after the events they talk about. And he immediately came out with, oh, no, they were eyewitnesses. And I said, well, how can you know? We don't even know who the authors are. And he said, oh, yeah, Mark was written by Mark John, and Luke was written by a guy named David Luke. And
Sure.
Just heard it in Bible study.
So the only thing you can do if somebody doesn't accept your assertion about facts is you can show them the evidence for why you hold that view, and then they're going to have to make up their mind whether or not they accept it or not. You can't forcibly change somebody's mind.
Sure.
And one of the things I recently went, there's a friend of mine in England, he tweets as Godless Spell Checker. His name's Stephen. And I did an interview with him when I was over there in Manchester. And the other day, I reached out to him and I said, how about we do a podcast? And I basically, for the first time ever, invited myself on somebody else's show. And it's because he was arguing. I repeatedly find myself in positions where I am friendly with and have friends on both sides of an issue. And it is, I know what the reason is. The reason is I'm willing to see nuance and they're not. Now, I may be wrong. I may be seeing too much nuance where something may be a little more black. I fully acknowledge that. But what I see happening is it's not so much alternate facts. That is happening. But we all have a baggaged experience that we cart along with us everywhere. And earlier when I was talking about we may not be using the words the same, they may not be using the word fact the same. But here's the example. I'm a feminist. What the hell does that mean? It means all kinds of things. What's the feminist position on pornography? Well, if you ask Sunsara Taylor or Taslim and Nazarene, they're feminists. They are vehemently anti-porn. I'm not, but maybe I'm... But I'm not the only one. If you ask Greta Christina, who's also a feminist, she's a former sex worker who edits a porn magazine. When you take a label, and with it, that label now applies to 20 different positions, and different people may agree or disagree with variants throughout there. The label isn't necessarily useless, but it isn't particularly helpful. So me telling you that I'm a feminist, you take your entire baggage of what you understand feminism to be, and you go, Matt's one of those. So I have my more liberal, progressive friends who, when they hear I'm a feminist, they understand that, hey, I'm for eliminating the privileged status of men, that there should be gender equality, that, women are people too, and they have a right to... Then there are the people who are perhaps further left than that, who would assume that I'm anti-porn, because they are. Then there are people who are further right than that, who hate feminists and everything about it, and they say, oh, you think women make 70 cents on a dollar? Well, that statistic's been proved wrong, and here's the... No, I didn't say that. We don't have pay equality. It's not 70 cents on the dollar. And we may not know enough about it to say where it can or should be. But if you're working towards equality, and all you're going to do is assume that somebody who uses this label is all the worst elements of what you disagree with, that's a problem. It's one of the reasons why I tend to identify as an atheist first, because about one thing, don't believe in God. Done. Doesn't tell you what my political views are. It doesn't tell you anything. So from there, I have to add on to other things. I'm a skeptic. I'm an atheist because I'm a skeptic. I'm a secular humanist. Doesn't mean I agree with everything in the Secular Humanist Manifesto. As a matter of fact, I think that the newest version may in fact be inferior to a previous version in a couple of areas. It's funny though. Most of the time, if I say I'm a Democrat, people don't assume that I agree with everything in the Democratic Party platform. If I say I'm a Republican, people don't assume that I agree with everything in the Republican platform. So we all have the ability to recognize that this label is complex and doesn't tell you enough about me. What kind of Democrat are you? And so there should perhaps be what kind of feminist are you, or whatever else. When it comes to the discussions where you understand this to be the case, and we're talking about a fact, all you can do is show them where you got that fact. And if they're then going to question your sources and all this other stuff, applaud them for their skepticism, and then ask them to make the case for theirs in a similar fashion to what you did. And if they can, maybe you should change your mind. Is there somebody who hadn't? Yes.
Hi, I've got a friend who was the faculty advisor for the University of Georgia Atheist Group, but then he became a Christian apologist. And so I'm taking this question from Facebook. He said he was curious to know if you believe in human free will, and if so, how the materialistic naturalist would rationally allow for that.
Yeah. So, question from a Facebook friend. Do I believe in human free will? I am on record and stand by the fact that I am a compatibilist when it comes to free will. I am almost entirely in agreement with Daniel Dennett. I'd recommend reading Elbow Room, The Varieties of Free Will Worth Wanting, and Freedom Evolves, and Consciousness Explained. So, that said, the type of free will that I'm advocating doesn't have any conflict with naturalism, and it's not libertarian free will. It's not the sort of free will that many Christians depend on. For me, free will is real simple, and I didn't want to get into it. What's your name?
Jack.
Jack? Jack could get up and walk out that door right now, or I could pick Jack up and drag him out that door. We recognize that there's a difference between those two situations. And for me, the difference between them is everything that encompasses what we want to say about free will. That I violated his will. Doesn't matter if it was determined by the universe at all. And it doesn't matter if my action to drag him out was determined by the universe at all. Those two scenarios represent a difference in autonomous agents' ability to act out their will or have their will restrained. That is the sum total of what we care about, because the only reason we care about free will is, am I making my own decisions as opposed to somebody else making them for me, or if it's all just robotic, and can I be held responsible for those positions? And yes, I can be held responsible for dragging Jack. I'm not going to drag you out of here, Jack. But that's it on free will. Yes?
So, when you became religious, or no, when you became an atheist,
Okay.
how did you go about telling, like, your parents,
Hmm.
family, and religious?
Yeah, so the coming out questions. I started doing a TV show, and I was working on a book that I would hope would explain to my parents why I no longer believed. Before I could get that book finished, or any book finished, my uncle, who was a former medical missionary, was Googling his own name and stumbled upon me on the TV show and called me at work. And long story short, he was the most spiritually wise person in the family. He's the one that everybody went to with questions and stuff because he's a missionary. I shit you not, Pascal's wager. I was sitting here at work thinking, oh boy, here comes the real test. I've been doing this atheist thing for a while now. I think I got it all down. But now here comes the guy who's, the best educated person in the family, the most spiritually wise. This is going to be, he's the one I went to before my transition actually started to say, look, I have an atheist roommate. How do I convince him? And he said, ask him where he gets his morality from. And I went, God, that's brilliant. That's how bad it was. And yet I figured that I would get something of substance. I didn't. I got Pascal's wager, and it was like, this is when I realized I don't need a PhD to debate anybody, because I've read and heard the arguments. I'm not going to get everything right, but I understand enough. And he said, well, I think you need to tell your folks or I'm going to tell them. Now, I'm probably 31, and my uncle is threatening to tattle on me for not believing in God anymore. So I called my dad and told him. He said, okay, and hung up the phone and went and Googled atheism. Rather than talk to the son that he's on the phone with, he Googles atheism. Then he informed my mother, and I was more worried about her, how she would take it. My dad took it much harder, but my mom thought it was answered prayer. For years, I've been wondering what was wrong with my son and praying to God that he would tell me, and today he told me. I mean, you can spin anything to be answered prayer. For years, I was wondering what was wrong with me because I was feeling so down. And today the doctor told me I've got terminal lung cancer. It's answered prayer because I wanted to know what... They then went to a Baptist convention to meet Lee Strobel and ask him what they should do. He sold them all of his crap. They gave it to me for Christmas. And I said, Mom, I already have all this crap. I've written rebuttals to this. If you want to buy me an apologist book, I'm happy to have them. Just ask me which ones I don't have so I can fill the library and not just get duplicates. Greta Christina wrote a good book on coming out and the reasons why and how to do it. She interviewed over 400 different atheists. Only one of them regretted coming out. Now, a lot of them went through bad periods of time, but things got better. Like, things were really bad. I got a birthday card from my parents that literally said, we are praying for God to stop you no matter what the cost. That's a death threat. I know what they meant. If God has to take you out to keep you from leading people to hell, that's what we want to happen. Things are better now. Things never got back to normal, but they got to a new normal. Of the people that Greta interviewed, only one person regretted it. My advice on coming out if you're not out, I want as many out atheists as we can have, because that's what gets us to atheist normalcy. That's why when I get letters from Europe, people are like, wow, everybody over here is an atheist. What the hell's up with where you live, Sorry. I wish you guys would invite me over for a talk, but nobody seems to need it over there. So, number one, don't make it a big deal. Oh, everybody come here and sit down. I have something very important to tell you. Stop believing in God. Don't make a big deal out of it. Go about living your life, be the same good person all the time. One of the things that was really difficult is that my folks believe that I am working for Satan, and yet they know that I'm a good person who they love. That is very difficult for them to deal with. We have agreed to not talk about religion because they're not equipped to have the arguments. They know that they would get demolished in arguments, and there's nothing that'll change their mind because Jesus is real and part of their life. So we just don't talk about it. So don't make a big deal about it. Make sure that you're ready to deal with all the potential consequences, because I get email from people who have lost their entire family, their entire social network, teenagers who've been kicked out of their parents' home. If you're in college and your parents are paying for your college and you're not sure how they're going to react, lie. Don't buy into this BS that there's something intrinsically wrong with lying. Sam Harris wrote a book on lying. It's the thing that he wrote that I most disagree with. I think there are times where lying is a good thing. Do I look fat in these jeans? Actually, on that one, I tend to tell the truth because it prompts a fun conversation that usually ends with sex. Fights are good for leading to that. Be honest. So my parents think I'm working for Satan. My wife's grandmother thought I was Satan. Had to go throw up from all the demonic energy that I put out on the show. Lied about us. Did not come to the wedding. Said all kinds of terrible things, including racist things, which made me go, wow, you just gave up any hope of the moral high ground. You've never even met me in person, and you just told your granddaughter the only thing worse than bringing me home would if she'd have brought a black guy home. I win. And slightly less worse than bringing me home is if she would have been a lesbian. Now, we have a black lesbian friend. And I was like, you should take her home for Christmas and hit the trifecta. I'll just stay here. They don't want to see me. You can do that. Yes. Yeah. That's how we knew her. Yeah. Black, lesbian, atheist friend. Yes. So yeah, don't make a big deal out of it. When they ask you questions, be honest. And also, as much as I'm happy for people to use the A word, and I know David Silverman, American Atheist, is everybody needs to use the A word and use it right now. I disagree with Dave on a number of things. Use the A word when you're comfortable, but if you're coming out and you're not sure what's going to happen, it is far better to introduce this when they question you as, yeah, I don't think I believe that anymore. Or, yeah, I'm not sure I ever believed that. Because Julia Sweeney tells the story of her mom saying when she told her she didn't believe in God, she said something like, well, at least you're not an atheist. So there's a way to ease this in and be honest. And I've seen families torn apart where it's lasted for years, many, many years. Beth and her family were estranged for almost 4 years. I wasn't estranged from my family, but it was strained. And now things are better.
My friend for 20 years won't talk to me because I don't believe anymore. So
Is he local or a Facebook?
he thinks I'm working for Satan as well. So yeah, he's an actor now.
That working for Satan, how's that pay? Because I've been unimpressed. All right, we're almost out of time. Yes, sir.
I think what made my personal transition to atheism so much easier, so much smoother, is that as I was discarding my religion, I replaced it with something far more robust.
Yep.
And that's the thing about it, is that religions are robust because they've been subject to natural selection.
Yeah.
That is what presents a big challenge for us, is replacing it with something even better.
I hear from people all the time who are heartbroken and distraught, who are, they're grieving. In some cases, they've lost their entire family. They might as well be dead. There have been people who called the show in those situations. My experience wasn't like that. Mine was pretty much very liberating. It was eye-opening. It was freeing. I'm with Hitchens that I wouldn't want somebody watching me like that. If, you know, everybody has a slightly different experience with it, and yeah, try to keep that in mind. That hey, it was really easy for me to come out. Why can't you come out? And by the way, that applies to all versions of coming out. What's easy for you may not be easy for somebody else. They've got different baggage. And if somebody, Marlene Winnell is a psychiatrist who's coined the term religious trauma syndrome, and she has been treating patients at retreats for years, where they are basically psychologically traumatized because they've lost their religion and all the things that come along with that, the social networks. But when people ask me, you know, how do you deal with the threat of hell and everything else, which hell? Are you only worried about the hell that you were indoctrinated to believe in? How much time have you been spent thinking about somebody else's, some other religion's heaven or hell? By the way, if somebody told you that you were going to inherit $1 billion on your 21st birthday and you got to be 21 and you found out, or 20, and it wasn't true, you feel bad about that. But then you've got to get on with life. And this is the probable lie of religion with regard to an afterlife, is that it's like telling somebody that. Because now for the first 20 years of their life, they're going to go way in debt and live high on the hog because they know that money's coming. That money's coming, and when the money doesn't come, they are screwed for the rest of their life. So when Pascal's wager tries to tell you that you've got nothing to lose, you have the truth to lose, and you have the entirety of human experience to lose.
This video is made possible by supporters of the Atheist Debates Patreon project. You can find more information and add your support at patreon.com/atheistdebates.